The Format as HTML Pro tool is used to create a task step that produces single or multiple HTML documents. You can choose to create the HTML template from scratch or import a pre-existing template. Recordsets and other task step properties can also be used to populate the HTML template to produce documents with dynamic content. These documents can then be consumed and then delivered by output tools such as the Send Email tool or FTP via the File Management or Transfer File tools. Practical applications that could incorporate this tool include dashboards, portals, reports, emails, and much more. The following video is a brief overview of how the HTML Pro tool functions. If you wish to follow this process in your own environment, you will need the training database, preferably in the same location as BPA Platform, and appropriate drivers installed for your chosen database. We are using Microsoft SQL Server in this example. You will also need the email report template and follow along task. These assets can be downloaded from the training resources link shown here. The new HTML Pro tool has many benefits over the previous Format as HTML tool, such as HTML4 and upward support, the ability to use multiple input record sets, support for multiple tables with or without nesting, extraction and handling of embedded local resources, and UTF-8 support. The Format as HTML Pro tool does not require any global configuration before being used in a task. For this overview video, we have an example task to demonstrate the tool. Before adding the HTML Pro tool, you will need to ensure that you already have your database prepared and know the data that you want to display. Let's open the ODBC query step from our prepared task. In this example, we are querying our database to identify the best performing sales regions. And we want the HTML Pro tool to present subtotals for each region with a grand total at the end. When we click the Execute button, we can see the data that will be available to the HTML Pro tool. We can close this tool and move on to the next step. Now let's take a look at the HTML Pro tool in BPA Platform. In the browser, in the Tools tab, under Format, drag the Format as HTML Pro tool onto the Design area. In the General tab, you can enter the step name and description. In the Data tab, you can specify the data sources to be included in your HTML document. It is worth noting that this tab is not available if you do not have any steps capable of exposing a record set in your task. Available record sets from our previous database query step are shown in the Input Record Sets pane. We will now drag the database query results into the Structure pane. We want this data to be grouped by region, so we will right-click the results, go to Templates, and Convert to Group. In the pop-up, we will select Region Description and click OK. For ease of use, we will rename these results by right-clicking and selecting Edit, and rename this to Group by Region. We will then drag results from the left pane onto our Group by Region to create a child. Let's rename this to Data. Now we can add the subtotal. Select Group by Region, right-click, go to Templates, and select Add Subtotals. In the pop-up window, in the column drop-down, select Net Amount 1 and click OK. We can now see the subnode has been added. We can then rename this to subtotals. Ensure the subtotals node is selected, and in the relationship pane below, we can specify the relationship between parent and child fields using drag and drop. Let's join region description on the left to region description on the right. Next, back in Input Recordsets, drag in another results from database query into the top level of the structure. This will be our grand total. Right-click, go to Templates, and select Convert to Grand Total. Then in the pop-up drop-down, select Net Amount 1 and click OK. Let's rename this to Grand Total. Click Group by Region, and on the right, the Document Generation Options pane gives us 3 options. Single Document, which will generate a new document each time the task step is run. The next option is One Document per row. This generates a new document for every record row in the input record set. And lastly, New Document when column changes. This will generate a new document each time the value in a specified column changes. For our task, we will leave this option as a single document, as we want it to generate a single page report. We now need to create a relationship within our data. We will select Data in the Structure pane. In the Relationship tab, we will drag Region Description on the left to Region Description on the right. Next, click Subtotals and open the Table tab. On the left side, we can see the options to group the data. This feature acts in the same manner as the Group by Condition in SQL. In the middle pane, we can see the columns and their properties on the right. You have the ability to add or delete columns within this table. Let's change the column property name of Net Amount 1 to Subtotal. We will now move on to the Design tab. In the top Structure pane, we can see the data structure we created in the previous tab, and below this, we have the HTML design area. This allows you to build the BPA Platform HTML template and specify where the BPA Platform data will go. You can type HTML directly into this window, paste from your favorite HTML editor, or import an existing template. The HTML template can use either inline, internal styles, or you can refer to a central style sheet via a URL. Okay, let's continue and import the email template we want to use for this example. From the HTML tab's toolbar, click the Open icon, and locate the tutorial template, and click Open. In the confirmation pop-up, click Yes. It is worth noting that when importing an HTML template, all referenced files, with the exception of externally hosted references, are automatically extracted and cached to the Resources tab. These are images, CSS files, JavaScript files, XML, and other HTML files. Back in the HTML tab, we need to insert the data into our imported HTML template. There are several methods you can use to insert your data. Firstly, locate the HTML comments. The quickest way is to drag in the top element from the structure pane into the HTML area and select the appropriate option for your needs. By clicking the Layout tab, we can see what the raw table looks like. The BPA Platform UI allows for minimal styling adjustments to be made for your convenience. However, it is recommended that you use the same tools you normally use within your web design and development workflow to create your templates. Back in the HTML tab, we will delete this and populate the table contained within the template. This will give us more control over the layout. Here we can see the div that acts as a wrapper for the repeated content. In this case, our sales regions. This class tells BPA Platform to loop through the contents until all the records have been processed in our document. We now need to tell BPA Platform which section to loop. To do this, go to the Structure pane and drag Group by Region after the class name, and in the menu, select Node ID. Now we will need the region names for our table. In the Structure pane, select Data. You can see all the available fields on the left. Then drag Region Description between the H2 tags. This will populate our template with Europe, North America, Asia, and Australia headings. We need to tell BPA Platform to loop this set of data. In Structure with Data selected, drag this after the TR class and select Node ID. We can see our column headings in the table as shown here, and we will now drag the matching fields into the table cells below from the Fields pane. Now we want to create a subtotal for each region. Notice that this is inside of the looping div section. In the Structure pane, select Subtotals and drag this after the H4 class, then select Node ID. Then with Subtotals still selected in the Structure pane, in Fields, drag Net Amount 1 after the word Subtotal in the H4 section. Outside of the looping area, we will have a grand total of all the amounts from above. To do this, in the Structure pane, drag Grand Total after the H3 class and select Node ID. Then with Grand Total still selected in the Structure pane, in Fields, drag Net Amount 1 after the Grand Total text in the H3 tags section. Before we preview the template, we need to change some of the field properties. In the Structure pane, select Data, and in Fields, select Net Amount 1. In Field Properties, change the data type to Currency. Then back in Fields, select Order Date, and in Field Properties, in the Data Type drop-down, select Date Time. In the Format section, we will customize this by selecting Pattern, and in the drop-down, selecting our desired format. Next, in the Structure pane, select Subtotals, then in Fields, Net Amount 1, and under Field Properties, in the Data Type drop-down, select Currency. We will then do the same for Grand Total. In the Field Properties, expand the Format area. This is where you can change the template to your appropriate locality. In this example, you can see this is set to ENGB using the # currency symbol. For this video, we will leave this at its default. We can now open the Layout tab to see how our template will look. Note that the editor available in the Layout tab is not designed to create the whole template. Clicking the Launch button opens your default browser to preview the template with placeholders. Lastly, we have the Options tab. You have the option to choose what happens when an error occurs, and if you are using string-based sorting, enable Use String Comparison for GR compatibility mode. Click OK to save and close this step. For this example, we need to add a Save File step. In the General tab, ensure Read Documents from a Source is selected, with the document source set to the HTML Pro Tools step. In the Main tab, set your chosen path where you want your file to be saved. And then give it a name. And ensure you add .html as the file extension. Then ensure UTF-8 encoding is selected. Click OK to close this step. And finally, let's link the steps together. We will now save and close this window and run the task. We can now see the task is running. On the desktop, we can now open the HTML file to see the results. In this example, the task saved it to our desktop, but in a real scenario, this could be uploaded via the FTP tool or sent using the Send Email SMTP tool. And that's it for this BPA Platform tool overview video. Call us for further information or visit codelessplatforms.com. Thanks for watching.